found The Naked Truth. Lively discussions about business, marketing, and personal development for small business owners. No hype, just help.
Hello! Happy Thursday! Welcome to our book club where Paul and I share our favorite books. And today, the book is all about what Paul likes to read, which is the Talent Code. Why the Talent Code?
I do like to read the. I don't. Okay, it's yeah.
I haven't read this, so I don't know. So
you haven't read it. You haven't read it at all. It's this. Okay. I know. This is how my Thursday's going. I will tell you, there's a risk that because I like this book so much, I'll tell you all the coolest stuff about it, and then you won't really need to read it. But I still think you all should. So Daniel Coyle has written several books that look at efficiency, productivity, work culture, these types of things. Like how can you get more done, create better, atmospheres and success levels, and so he's got like books on corporate culture and different stuff. But the Talent Code is just so awesome. And what I love about it is it directly addresses a long held myth that just needs to be squashed, which is that talent is something you're born with. This has been a long standing thing that human beings have tapped into and believed, and it just isn't true. And now Coyle, and he wrote this book several years ago, Coyle went around and took the time to talk with the researchers who can prove it. And he lays it all out in this book. And it's just fantastic. So Ifat, tell me, like, what's one thing that you wish you could do that you feel like you just don't even begin to have the talent for?
Fly.
Like a bird?
Like a bird, like a plane.
No, see, so this is a great example. Like, so talent is not like you can't be Ifat at 5 foot and be like,
No.
I want to play in the NFL, right?
Right.
Like you're not going to play in the NFL.
Right.
That's not, but see, this is what happens is people think that's that's where they think of talent, like that you just weren't born with the talent for it. No, that's
Is that the same thing
stuff.
of like, where the criticism against the education system, where if you ask a fish to climb trees, and of course they're going to fail,
right?
They're not supposed to, right? So is that kind of like that same thing where like, okay, a fish is a fantastic swimmer, don't ask him to be, a climber or whatever.
Right.
That's
so what you have to be reasonable here, right? When we talk about like what's something you wish you could do, I'm not saying what's a dream that you have that like is this crazy moonshot dream that maybe just you don't have the basic physical abilities for, right? We're talking about but like skill-based, talent-based. So like
probably speaking, owning a business,
right?
Making the best chocolate cake ever.
There you go, right?
Kind of
So what happens is those are great examples. People get drawn into these limiting beliefs about themselves where they think this thing that I wish I could do requires a talent that I just wasn't born with. And I could try to sort of do it, but I'd never really be able to do it because I just wasn't born with this ability. This most commonly gets assigned to things like music, right? Music or public speaking. Right? There are these things that we want to believe that people are just inherently born with. Now, certainly,
rhythm. I don't know if you can teach rhythm.
You absolutely can. That's so are there people who are born with like virtuoso levels of musical ability? Yes, they are. But that's really a different issue. We don't have to have virtuoso musical ability levels to be able to play the piano. Like, and yet there are people who think I just wasn't born with musical ability, so I can't learn to play the piano.
So, okay, so what you're talking about, there's like two levels, right? There's the Mozart level, and then there's the, around the campfire level.
Right.
Yeah.
So think about this though. This is what Coyle did that was so awesome. Coyle just was naturally curious, and he's like, why is it that some places are really, really good at turning out high achiever after high achiever after high achiever? And so the examples he uses in the book is he traveled all over the world to write this book. He went to Russia, and he went to the tennis camp in Russia that has produced like 15 top 20 Russian female tennis players over the life duration of that school. Right. And so like there's become a thing, right? Like you go, Russia produces fantastic female tennis players.
Yeah.
What? So like Russians are just born with some gene to, no, of course not. Right.
So, you know, and it's very interesting that you say that, right? Isn't all the Rocky movies surrounded by that, right? Like, let's go be the Russian athlete that are super trained and super awesome and super big and super all that stuff. Yeah, but it is interesting, like why some schools do produce better people.
And when you read this book, Ifad, you should read this book at least just for it's so fascinating. So he goes to Russia and he does that. He goes to Brazil and talks to them about why do you have such dominant soccer players. He goes to a small island nation, can't remember the name off the top of my head, but they're like the whole island only has like 2,000 people on it or something like that. And yet their little league team has made it to the Little League World Series multiple times.
In what sport?
Baseball.
Oh.
Baseball. He goes to a vocal coach in Texas who operates in a strip mall, and she has produced multiple pop stars. Like she vocal coached Jessica Simpson and like 3 other famous women. So like he goes to these, what he calls hotbeds of talent. And he would go to these places and he'd go, why are you able to keep producing like, you know, you think to be a professional athlete, the odds of becoming a professional athlete are staggeringly against you. Like they're
because of other competition.
Because so much competition.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, you know, he goes to the Russian tennis school and says, it's so hard for someone to become a professional tennis player. How is it that not only do you produce a lot of professional tennis players, but you've produced over a dozen who made it into the top 15 rankings in the world?
And his answer?
So the answer, so of course, these people all just focus on what they do.
Yeah.
So they couldn't really answer immediately because they're like, well, I just do what I do, you know? So he'd interview them, and then he found the themes, right? And he picked out the themes.
Yeah.
And the themes come down to they seem like different things, but he figured out that what they all come down to are what he calls deep practice.
Oh,
shallow practice,
okay.
deep
Now
practice.
Now I know the book.
Right?
Yeah.
So like we talked about this once before, the idea of like, if you want to be a better golfer, you can go to the driving range and you can hit 100,000 golf balls.
Right.
And you're probably going to get better somehow. But will you be able to go pro? Not necessarily, because how do you know you're hitting them the right way?
Right.
Like just hitting them isn't going to make you better. You've got to hit them with the knowledge of what you're actually doing down to a piece by piece mechanical level. The elbow, the wrist, the hips, the back, the head. Like you've got to get into that deep mechanical stuff. And so what all of these coaches had in common, all of these teachers and coaches, was they were deep mechanical teachers. Like he went to this music school in central New York State that somehow they keep cranking out awesome violin players. And he went there and he talked with them, and they were talking about how, yeah, not only do their kids practice more than the average kid in America, right? The kids are putting in their work, but like they get down with them to these minute levels of detail about how to play the violin, so that when they're practicing in ways that 90% of the other kids aren't practicing.
Yeah.
That's what makes the difference.
Yeah. So it's I can't remember who said that, right? There's like, it doesn't matter if you spend 10,000 hours practicing something, doing it wrong, right now you put it into memory, like how to do something not well. So it's not like practice makes perfect. It's perfect
practice makes perfect. Yeah. And this is what happens is people hear about catchy things like Malcolm Gladwell's book that first brought up the notion of 10,000 hours.
Right.
His book brought that up. And once people heard that, a lot of people were like, oh, so if I just practice 10,000 hours, I'm going to be awesome. And it's like, no, if you're practicing like shit, you're going to be like awesome in a shitty way.
It's true. It's true, you know? And it's really funny because I wonder, I think this is kind of like missing in the American society. And correct me if I'm wrong. But when I came here, teachers really want you to feel good about yourself and not get discouraged by not doing it well, that they find different ways going like, hey, you're doing good when you're not, right? And so like I took a swimming class in college because I just needed the credits.
Yeah.
And you know, I think I told you, right? And and I'm doing what do you call that? What is this called?
Just like a crawl stroke. It's like an overhand crawl.
Yes. What is it called?
I think a crawl stroke or freestyle
something,
is usually
right. And she walks across like next to me, right on the pavement, and she looks at me and she goes like, "Nice try." And I'm like, "What is that?" Right? And she goes like, "What?" And I'm like, "Obviously, I'm not doing it right. Tell me how to do it right?" But they're like or like in Krav Maga, right? Like I would correct someone, be like, "Hey, don't correct them." I'm like, "Why not? They're not doing it right based on what you taught us." And they're like, yeah, but you'll discourage them from continuing. And I'm like, what kind of a mindset is that? So I've been practicing for an entire year, punching wrong, you know? And then when I leveled up, they're going like, okay, now that you're level 2, let's fix it. And I'm like, then what have we done for an entire year, right? I'm like, now I have muscle memory of doing it wrong.
So this is the other part. This is awesome. It's a good segue. So the other part of this book, in addition to him going and talking to the coaches and teachers, he also splits that time by going and talking to the scientists who study skill development in the brain, right? And what he learns about is this neuroscience concept that's called myelination. And this is the other really crucial. This is again where even if you don't read this book, this is the like huge value of this book is when you practice, what you're doing is you're causing an internal process in your brain called myelination. And what it means is there's a specific nerve path, like if I go to pick my nose, there's a specific nerve pathway in my brain that makes that work, makes it happen, right?
Yeah.
It's just for that action. The more you do it, the more the brain grows this protein called myelin along that nerve pathway. It grows around the nerve like rings of a tree. And it can go as thick as 50 rings around the central nerve.
Oh, wow.
Right? The substance conducts electricity. So actually it insulates against electricity is more appropriate. So what's happening is when your nerve doesn't have a lot of myelin, more of the electrical signal can leak when it's being used.
Okay.
The more myelin you have, the more insulated the nerve pathway is, the less leakage there is, the better travel of the electrical signal.
Okay.
So your brain has billions and billions of neurons, too many to just myelinate them all. So we've evolved to have an inner sense of like, if I'm doing this more, it must be important, so I'll myelinate that pathway more. And so if you're practicing with the crappy punch, you're myelinating the crappy punch pathway.
And how hard is it to correct afterwards?
And it can be really hard sometimes. The good news is it can be corrected. And that's the most important thing about this book is what Coyle really lays out is when you combine deep practice with the understanding of myelination, you get this huge potential. You understand that there's almost nothing that's out of bounds for you, except for like, you know, if you don't have the physical gifts to be able to play in the NFL because of where the NFL's at, that's a different issue. But like, if you know, and will you be able to keep up with the violin virtuoso? No, you won't, but you can learn to play the violin. Like, you can get better at all the stuff we think we're not good at. You can get good at, Maybe
Well,
you
to
won't
a
get
level,
top
right?
5%.
Yeah, to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah. So now the question is like, what do you want to get good at? Right. And just go do it. And, and who are you, like, how do you, like, who do you trust to give you that deep learning and the
Exactly.
correct
So
learning?
that's the,
Yeah.
you can't, if you say, this is important to me, I really want to get better at it. Now we come back to, the purpose of this show, right? So that's where, and it almost connects back to, in some ways, there was a lot of variables. The last episode, we talked about what makes you get your ass in gear, right?
Right.
And part of,
Right.
if you're going to spend money on a coach, a mentor, a program, part of what I think a lot of people aren't doing is they're not doing the due diligence on figuring out if that person is the appropriate coach or that program provides the appropriate instruction that's going to help you get your deep practice in. And this is the reality of, this is part of what drive you and me crazy about business marketing, right? Is there's so much smoke and mirrors. There's so much, I just want to sell something regardless of whether you should be. And so this is what we all have to get better at, is how do you do your research to find out if that's really the right person to teach you the marketing you want, if that's really the right person to teach you the business management you want, and so on and so on.
Yeah. And the fact that they're great at marketing it doesn't mean that they're the great at teaching it, right? Knowing and teaching two different things, that
Right.
as a English professor, right?
Yeah.
Just the fact that you know something doesn't mean you can teach it. And the other part is that just because they're great at marketing doesn't mean that they know how to teach you, because they might have hired someone to do the marketing for them and you have no idea that this is not them doing it. Just like they hired a marketing company, now they look like $1 million and they charge you for it. So how would you, Paul, judge whether someone has a deep understanding of a topic and you can actually learn from them?
You have to, this is a broader, like what I coach people on in general theme. You have to get better at asking good questions.
Yes.
You have to really devote yourself to thinking about what's the best question I can ask in this circumstance, right? So you've got to be good at asking questions, listening to the answers, and then asking more questions. Because if you don't, and you've got to be comfortable putting people on the spot.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean never. I wouldn't advocate, like, if you're trying to vet a mentor, an instructor, a coach, I'm not saying trying to trick them at all, but like a lot of times what happens is in our culture today, people are so averse to conflict that they won't ask questions out of a fear of seeming rude or conflictual.
And they won't give you advice, even if you're doing
right?
it wrong.
And so, like, if you don't ask the question, you can't figure out whether this person is really the best resource for you or not. You've got to be willing. I tell people, I say, look, if you don't want to train with me in hypnotism, that's fine. Like, I don't expect that I'm going to be the hypnotism trainer for everyone, but at least go ask a lot of questions to the other people. What happens I think this is reflective of a lot of industries, in hypnotism, what most happens when people they go, I want to become a hypnotist. And so what they do is they immediately go, how much is it going to cost me and how long is it going to take?
Yep.
And that's really what they're basing their whole, right?
Yeah.
How much is it going to cost me? How long is it going to take? Too much money?
Yeah.
Nope. Too much time? Nope. And you go, so that's what you're setting the bar for what kind of a hypnotist you become.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
You got to ask more questions than that. You got to
it's really interesting because it's like, my Creed video, right?
Yeah.
My awesome Creed video. So I'm going to tell you guys a secret.
What'd you do?
Editing makes everything beautiful, right?
Did you fall down?
No, so I didn't fall down, but I was looking at the little snippets, right? And like in the one where I bounce and roll Caleb, I'm looking at my stance and I'm like, okay, this is not a good one. And, I should be more angled, right? So my legs were too far. And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, now after 2.5 years of doing CAV, I can see what I'm doing wrong. And I can be like, okay, this is not right. I should do this better. I should move that better. And And I was like, you know what? I've been doing this for 2.5 years and I really, really want to get good at it. Why don't I start taking private lessons? And then I was thinking back on my Spanish and I was like, I took private lessons in Spanish and then I immersed myself in it. And now I'm a Spanish speaker, right? I can read, I can write, I can converse. Why don't I do the same with Grav, which is very important to me, right? So I go to Caleb and I'm like, hey man, did you see the Creed video? He's like, yeah, that was great. And I'm like, so I want to say thanks for, being very nice and like rolling when you shouldn't have rolled. And he's like, what are you talking about? You rolled me. And I'm like, no, I didn't. He's like, yeah, you did. And I'm like, no, you've been, super nice for the camera. He's like, no, you rolled me. You had different things that. And I was like, yeah, but I want to get better at it. I was like, I want you to teach me. And he's like, what do you want to learn? I was like, I don't know. I've been thinking about it for like 2 weeks. I'm like, what specifically do I want to focus on? And I don't know. How do you work? And he goes like, I can do anything. What do you want? And I was like, okay, well, let's work on confidence. And he goes like, okay, well, what does that look like for you? And I was like, fudge, why can't you just like tell me, right? But these are the questions of like someone that actually understands the craft and knows like, hey, I can go this way, that way, that way. What do you want? What does it look like for you? And I can direct you. And then we can figure out if this is a good, right? It's a good thing. So I was like, okay, Caleb knows his shit, right? We can go from different places and we can do that. Yeah. But when you go to like a lot of marketers and a lot of coaches out there, they're just like, they'll never tell you the details. That's one thing, right? They'll never tell you the details of what goes into it. They'll be like, oh, we have this system and the system is going to do this thing. But how do you do that? Well, we have this system that we've been working with our team. And I'm like, yeah, but specifically, how do you do this specific thing? Oh, we have this system that will give you right away that like, they don't know, they have a team, someone's running it for them. They won't be able to coach you. And they have a template that if you don't fit into, too bad.
I'm not going to mention names because I just want to be, I don't want to seem like I'm trying to be jerky, but I was at a live event and I was between sessions and I was out in the hallway at this conference center and I started chatting with this woman and I was like, have you been to one of these before? And she's like, yeah, I've been actually like, this is probably my fourth one. And I was like, wow. And so we started chatting and she goes, what about you? And I go, I've been to one of these before and this is my second one. And I said, hey, this person's, have you ever thought about doing their mastermind group? And she goes, I have thought about doing it. And I go, but you haven't done it or else you would have said that differently. She goes, exactly. And I go, can I just ask like, why didn't you do it? And she goes, yeah, she goes, totally. She goes, I love this person. Obviously I'm here again. I love them. She goes, but I talked with someone who did the mastermind group, $40,000 a year mastermind group.
Ouch.
And she said, and he said to me, here's the reality. There isn't a mastermind group. There are mastermind groups. There's a 20,000, a 40,000, and 100,000.
Okay.
Right. And he said, so what, and she was thinking about doing the 20,000. He goes, you're not going to learn anything at the 20,000. And she's like, what? And he goes, you're going to meet amazing people. You're going to come to fun events. You're going to make great connections. You might get some great JV opportunities. He goes, what you're really paying for at the 20,000 level is access to other serious business people. He goes, I'm in the 40,000 and I'm just barely starting to get taught like what makes these people big money. He goes, but even now, he goes, what I'm figuring out is when they say they have a system, they don't have a system. He's like, they have a thing they did once that worked. And it's true that it did work. So it feels like a system. He said, but they haven't been able to replicate it since.
Yeah.
He goes, so what their system is constantly testing and retesting and changing. He goes, so they never can go, so here's what you do, blah, blah, blah. Right. He goes, that will never happen. No. He goes, and I was like, so it's not that they're lying. Like they're not lying.
No, they're giving you the recipe, the chocolate cake recipe without the amount of sugar.
But it's never
right?
what you want it to be,
But they're like, here, this is how you can create this beautiful, luscious chocolate cake, right? But instead of like saying like 1.5 cups, they're going to be like 1 cup. And then it doesn't come out exactly the same. And they're going to be like, oh, for that, you need the $40,000 mastermind. That's the challenge, right? And the challenge, and this is why I don't like masterminds, because I think you can meet all the people that you want just through referral and relationship and finding them online, which is what I've been doing my entire life, right? Like you don't need a mastermind to
Well,
meet people.
I think you.
I don't think
if
so.
you went back to the way masterminds first, I think masterminds have been co-opted. You know, they've been taken and evolved into something that doesn't represent, you know, like I don't think the majority of masterminds that are happening today are happening the way that
Napoleon
Carnegie
Hill
was
intended.
doing them, you know?
Yeah.
And so again, it comes back is like easy to feel like we've gotten off topic, but we haven't. This comes back like, this is like, where's the deep practice versus where's just the like flashy social interaction, you know, like when you choose to align with people, how many of them can really break down? I have this mentorship group that I'm doing right now for small business owners, right?
Yep.
I keep like probably every other week, someone asks a question in which I say, I don't know. And anyone who tells you they do is full of shit. like their natural instinct is like, they'll say, can you show me how I can make this lead page that like, what's the right way? They'll say, what's the right way to do? And I'll go, there is no right way.
Right.
There are several good ways that have borne out, right?
Yep.
We know there's but if you're looking for the perfect lead page that's always going to convert for your thing, doesn't exist. You need to like work it and test it and work it and test it. I was like, and no one wants to talk about that because that's not sexy. Right?
But
like
here in the naked truth, this is exactly what we're doing. We're telling you the real truth behind stuff.
So
you know,
crazy.
yeah, the numbers are very small too. You know, it's a 3% conversion, a 5% conversion. It's not a big conversion, but if you're playing with big numbers, you can.
Well,
come
they
up
don't
to the
tell you
millions.
that though, if right? Like you see these guys who they do these launch and they go in 24 hours, I made $3.5 million and you can too. And you're like, and they're not lying. They did it. You go, yeah, you did it one time. Do it 10
No,
more
but
times and
here's
then I'll
what
be
they're not.
impressed.
It's not just that, right? So the launch did $3 million. I kept 300,000
Yeah.
because I paid affiliates, I paid Facebook ads,
Yeah.
I paid, you know, my team, I paid all that stuff. So
Yeah.
there's actually a very successful marketer who went through something like that, and he goes like, dude, I worked 2 months for $400,000 and it was so much work. And I do that when I do corporate coaching. Then why do all these launch? Like the launch did 4 million. I
Yeah.
didn't keep 4 million.
Yeah.
But it's fantastic for, you know, for like, hey, we did 4 million.
Crazy.
Here's the bank account. Here are the
crazy.
interest. Here's the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just say hi to a few of the people here.
Do it.
Like Michelle Patterson. I would love to join you on the Real Share. And Michelle Williard Hoffer says that vetting is so important. It is. We don't do enough of it, sadly.
True.
Melody says, I love science. This is fantastic, especially when considering that I've had head injuries. I've been doing a lot of muscle memory exercises and meditation, and it's really helped. In conjunction with this, it really helps my confidence and building great future.
Nice.
Good for you. Good for you.
for
Because I
you.
think that's like one of the hardest things that, you know, kind of like separate humanity, right? Those, when something happens to them, just give up. And those who go like, no, I'm going to rise above it and turn it into something sweet. And I'm always curious. Remember the movie, The Perfect Storm?
Yep.
Remember how at the end, right? Some of them were just like going down with the ship, and some of them going like, no, I'm going to swim to the surface and I'm going to wait to be saved. Do you remember that? And I was like, what's the difference, right? Like, why some people go like, I'll just drown now. You know, and some people go like, no, I'm going to try it. Like, it's really fascinating to me. Like, I don't know how do you, maybe this book is talking about how do you raise that mindset of like, no, I'm going to come up, rise above the waves.
You know, that's like, you go to, again, a hero of mine is Malcolm Gladwell, and he wrote that book called Blink.
Yeah.
That looks over and over again in different ways at how human beings make decisions. And there's an amazing story in there about these people. I think they were all guys because it tends to be a male dominated profession, but smoke jumpers, the guys who skydive in, certainly there are women who do it. I'm not, but it's done. And there's this story about these guys who jumped in and they're fighting this fire, and something changed really fast in a way they couldn't have predicted with the wind. And it went from them working with the fire going away from them to all of a sudden it was turned and it was coming right at them. And the wind was making it was like like it was like a car driving at them. It was not just like slow. It was like coming, and they were on the side of a mountain or a ridge. So the only way they could get away was they had to run uphill. And so it made it so hard, but they drop and they turn and they start running, and they're running uphill, and they're running and they're running, and it's just coming. Now it was a ways away, so they still had time, but they could see it was just coming and coming and coming. And the one guy just has an instinct, right? And he stops running, and all the other guys are like, "What are you doing? Come on, come on, come on." And he stops running, and he pulls out matches, and he lights a match, and he throws it down at his feet, and he lights a fire at his feet.
Yeah.
And the fire starts to spread, right? And it's burning and burning and burning and burning. And the other guys are still running, they're running, and he's just standing there, and he stays, and it burns out just in time for him to then stand to like lay down on the burn spot. And the fire comes and flies all around him. But since he already burned out a spot, it was just far enough away that it didn't kill him. Wow. He still got some burns because of the intense heat, but it didn't kill him. It went uphill and killed every other single guy. What? They couldn't outrun it. They couldn't outrun it. So just because he had one moment of instinct, he saved his life, you know, and what most of us would do is just try to outrun it. They all died. There's those kinds of things, you know, when the way that people make decisions, that's what we're all in the game of, right? Like your relationships, your business, like constantly, it's just a constant decision making.
I completely didn't think it's going to turn that way.
Yeah.
I thought he's going to die and everybody would be like, you idiot.
No,
wow.
He was the only one that lived, and all the other ones died. Yep.
Wow.
So, you know, ultimately that's every day. I really do. I think I've sort of, it's one of my mantras. I'm like, it's all about decision making. Everything is about decision making. And that's our final thought. Now it comes back to, and Coyle's book is everything is a skill. Mm-hmm. And so if you view your life as everything is a skill, then you pretty much have unlimited potential, because you go, so I can learn to do anything that I need to do, and I can improve anything I'm not doing well and do it better.
And I can become better at decision making.
That's super empowering. Super empowering.
It is. Well, but it puts a lot of pressure on you. Did I make the right decision? But you have to just understand, no, there's gonna be times when you don't. There's gonna be times when you screw up. But that's it's you're not alone. That's the way it is for everybody. Yeah, that's true.
So again, if you can adopt that mindset of like, so you take the feedback and you try again, and you just keep going.
And you go deep, and you become better at it, and you improve your skills. Melody says, I reached my goal I set up on day one. My LLC was approved this morning. Congratulations.
Nice job.
Good job. High five. LLC. Welcome to the business world. If you have any questions, Wednesday is our question day. Just come to Be the Naked Truth. Questions. We'll answer all your business questions since you're just starting with LLC. All of them. No, I'm kidding. Tomorrow, Friday, we're done with another week. I will have something to tell you about this, because I am doing it.
Just teasing.
I am. And someone gave me, you're going to totally geek out of that. Do you know the critical thinking wheel? Have you seen that one?
No.
I'm going to share with you tomorrow. As an educator, you are going to be like, oh my God, I want one.
Well, I was going to skip tomorrow, but now I'll show up.
I don't know, Paul. I'm going to start having abundance anxiety. What do you call it? Separation anxieties.
Well, it's going to be awesome. Cool.
I know. All right. Well, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Happy Thursday. Grab the book if you want to. If you want to learn what about deep skills, right? Like actually improving your skills and going deep.
Yep.
Do that. And then join us tomorrow so we can kick the hay. Kick the hay, kick the shit, kick the something on a Friday.
Such a foreigner. Kick the hay?
Not kick the hay. Kick the hay is to go to sleep, right?
Nobody kicks the hay, you thought?
That's going to sleep. What's the...
Is that hit the hay?
Hit the hay.
I feel like I live in Perfect Strangers right now. This is all...
No,
like one of my favorite shows from the 80s. All right. Ifat, for those of you who gets that reference, leave comment. Perfect Strangers. I would be who, and Ifat would be who if we're working in the metaphor of perfect strangers.
Dude, now I have to go and look it up.
And you can't Google it. You got to know. You got to genuinely know and leave a comment. And I will, for the first person that leaves a comment that we find that gets it right.
Okay, wait. Michelle said, she says bulky.
Who's bulky? Who would be
Who's
bulky?
bulky, Michelle? Who's bulky?
She knows. She's got it.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see who bulky is. Now I have to go Google it up. Who the hell is bulky?
Ifat would be
Cousin Larry. So
I would be cousin Larry. Unfortunately, I'm not too excited about that. Ifat would be Balki Bartakamus.
And now
Yep.
Ifat is gonna go and learn who they are.
So, that's the best way we could have ended this episode. All right, happy Thursday, everybody.
Hey, if you enjoyed today's episode, come back and spend more time with us. You could be on the broadcast sharing your thoughts. We hang out live Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern at www.bethenakedtruth.com/live.